Yesterday, for the very first time, Boris Johnson said in answering questions that he would hold an independent inquiry into coronavirus. The calls for this to be, held sooner rather than later. But when do you think we should have it, and what should be the terms on which it's operated?
Well, of course, we've already got committees in the House of Commons looking at things, but I think we do need this independent inquiry, so it's a good thing. But it must happen right now. I mean, I don't think we should be waiting. We know that if you do things a long time after the event, everyone starts getting their excuses in. But the crucial thing, Julia, is that we've got to learn lessons now about what's gone wrong, what's gone right, and make sure that we are ready for if this happens again, either with the second spike of this coronavirus or indeed any future one. And it's got to be part of government planning. So there should be. I'm not sure this government's ready to do it. They should have a very open process and get somebody in now to start setting up this inquiry straight away.
There is an argument. This is sort of, I'm likening it to the horrors of the Grenfell fire. And we've had that report. And it looks like, inquiries take a very long time. That's like sort of starting to hold the inquiry when the first flames are licking up the first flat of the building. I mean, realistically, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. We may have a second wave. We're dealing with the economic fallout. Shouldn't all hands on deck be about saving lives and saving livelihoods rather than pointing the finger of blame?
Well, no, I mean, let's be clear. An inquiry should be looking at what's worked and what's hasn't, where there needs to be improvement and where...
Do we not already know a lot of that?
Well, exactly. We know quite a lot from what's happening.
So why do we need the inquiry now, then?
Well, because I think it's very important that you have an independent body that's doing this. So obviously, committees in Parliament are doing some of this work, but we have limited access to the paperwork. We aren't... my committee has more than some on certain areas because the national auditors can go into departments and find things. But actually, I think it also sharpens the minds of people who are trying to work on this now to make sure that when they're making decisions, they're aware that someone will be looking at those and very quickly seeing what they're doing.
Do you honestly think that? But do you honestly think that at the beginning of this pandemic that no one was thinking, I might have to answer questions about why I'm doing this in terms of the number of lives lost and the janking of the economy? Surely everybody, from the top of the NHS downwards and every government minister and special advisor has been and Sage committee member must have been thinking, people are going to look back on this moment and ask why I'm making this decision.
Yeah, well, I think anyone who's ever been in a position like that in government or indeed in other big organisations knows that every time you make a judgment, you're making a judgment on the basis of the facts you've got, and you get some right and you get some wrong. But we want to know what can be done to improve things. And the problem is, I think, at the moment that we're already seeing a defensiveness from government. So we've seen what you mentioned, the Intelligence and Security Committee, an attempt to nobble the chair there. We've seen an appointment to another committee, an unusual way, by the government nominating its own chair rather than Parliament doing that. So actually having a body that's independent, that's looking at this and saying positively, maybe the finger of blame will be pointed, of course, but also there's a positive element to this. We need to say what needs to be done to make sure that any mistakes that have been made are not repeated and that we are working hard to save lives in the future, and also the impact on the economy. So there's lots of layers to this. One of the key things about getting someone in now the Prime Minister has conceded the point that we should be doing this, get someone in to set those terms of reference and get ready so that we can get on with this as quickly as possible.
OK, Meg Hillier, thank you very much indeed. Labour Cooperative MP, Chair of the Public Accounts Select Committee. And of course, they'll be looking at public finances, which is going to get worse and worse as things go on, looking at what was spent where and how, and those decisions, no doubt, looking into that alongside an independent inquiry. Right now, let's talk more about this with Sir Ed Davey. He's MP, of course, an acting leader of the Liberal Democrats. Good morning to you, Sir Ed.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just first up, there's quite a lot I want to talk to you about. First up, talking about this independent inquiry. You've been calling for an independent inquiry for a long time. Why do you think that it should start now, though, rather than when we've actually got through the business of keeping people alive and keeping our economy going?
I think you can do both at the same time. Most of the people who are treating the patients in our hospitals, those hero NHS and care workers, they're not going to be involved in the inquiry. And even the officials in Whitehall in Public Health England, the vast majority of those won't be needed in the inquiry. So this is a complete fig leaf of an excuse by the Prime Minister. He's trying to delay. I was delighted that in my question yesterday, I managed to get this commitment out of him on the floor of the House, so that the first time he's given that commitment, there will be an independent inquiry. And now we've got to make sure that it happens as soon as possible in the right form. So I've written to him I've asked him if before Parliament goes on holiday in the recess, can he now give us a timetable, propose the chair, give the terms of reference, and make it clear it will have the powers that you need for such an inquiry to get to the truth under the 2005 Act, the Inquiries Act, which gives a very strong legal framework to make sure an inquiry can do the job that the public want. Let us remember, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of people, families and friends, are grieving. Our economy is in a mess. It is completely reasonable that we have that inquiry, and we have that as soon as possible.
Okay, but the trouble is there'll be lots of people concerned that actually if the government is focusing on back covering, which bottom covering, we know that's what or every government of every political hue ends up doing, everyone involved. And again, it's not just be the government that's going to perhaps have the finger pointed at them. It's going to be senior figures in the NHS, senior figures in Public Health England and the like. And it is on the SAGE committee as well, some of their advice. That they're not going to be focused on doing what they need to do right now. Surely a lot of the lessons that we need to learn are things like, making sure we've got enough PPE, not sending loads of elderly people home from hospital to care homes without giving them giving them a COVID test to check that they're negative. I mean, frankly, an awful lot of this was the bleeding obvious to most of us with half a brain. We didn't need to have any qualifications to know this. Those lessons have already been learned, haven't they?
Julia, of course, all the things you've just said are right. A lot of it was, to use your phrase, bleeding obvious. But why did they not do it?
Good question.
There has been a complete failure of this government. They have been
no. The NHS made a lot of those decisions, and Public Health England made a lot of decisions as well.
Boris
No.
Johnson.
I've been very critical.
Number 10, Julia, because
Excuse me.
Excuse
me. How dare you ask that question?
I dare,
How
Julia.
dare you? I have been. Well, I'm sure they felt that when I was saying that Dominic Cummings should lose his job, weren't they? No, I'm saying I've been very critical. I had the Health Secretary on yesterday criticising him about the lack of the PPE.
I'm delighted to hear it. I must have missed the programme.
Well, yes, you should probably listen to my show. You'd probably learn more, sir. I speak as I find. I think the government has done a number of things wrong. I think they've done a number of things right. But crucially, we can't just say everything's the fault of the government. A lot of these were decisions that were taken by Public Health England or by the NHS. Now, that doesn't mean the government shouldn't have stepped in and gone, you're wrong, or we're going to take the way. But there's going to be a lot of blame over a lot of different people.
Well, first of all, Julia, Public Health England answers directly to the Secretary of State for Health. It's the one part of the health service that responds to the health secretary.
So you're saying the NHS doesn't? So you're saying, so you just made my point for me.
No. Let me help you out. There are parts of the NHS that are in an independent organisation. That is true. But Public Health England is the one bit that isn't.
And the NHS's decision to send people back to care homes without giving them COVID tests?
Well, one of the reasons we need an inquiry, Julia, is so we can find out who made that decision. Because I'm not sure. Do you know who made that decision?
Well, we've been told that it was the NHS. That was an NHS policy.
Let's find out who decided that policy, shall we? That's why you have an inquiry.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to have an inquiry, but I'm pointing out that the inquiry may point fingers at a lot more people other than just the government.
It may be, but that's why.
So you've just agreed with me then? Are you in the pay of the government, Sir Ed?
No, don't be silly. I mean, you're just being very silly now, Julia. Let's get back to the reality. The reality is, over 40,000 people have died. And there are hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, well, you've made that point,
who
yes.
Are, well, yes, but it's the point. It's why I don't want all this jokiness. This is a very serious issue. It's why I've been raising it.
I'm sorry.
And our economy is in real trouble, and we need to take this rather more seriously. And let me tell you one of the things that really worries me.
We're all taking this very seriously. Thank you very much.
In 2016, the government held a simulation into what a pandemic might be like. It's called the Cygnus exercise. The Conservative government held that, quite rightly, and it concluded a whole set of things that needed to be done.
Okay.
And health ministers, Conservative health ministers, and indeed the Conservative prime ministers, were shown that report because it was a national security issue. How do we keep our people secure? And they were told from an exercise funded by you and me, the taxpayers, what to do. And it appears they didn't do it.
Yep, I get absolutely. We are when we will be holding those people to account. Let me also ask you about the government being held to account over the whips taking away, well, the Tory whips taking away the whip from Julian Lewis after he stood against the government-chosen candidate Chris Grayling to be the chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee. Normally, that committee chooses its chair itself. Government got involved. Julian Lewis basically used the support of SNP and Labour members to win that chairmanship. He's now lost the Tory whip. What do you make of all that?
Well, I think this is yet another example of Boris Johnson and Number 10 going to areas that they shouldn't do. The Act of Parliament that creates this committee, and it's a very unique committee actually, makes it clear that this is not a committee run by the government. It is a committee that is independent, run by the MPs serving on that committee. And the MPs were quite right to decide their own chair and not have a chair chosen by the Prime Minister. That's what the law says. And for Number 10 to turn around and take the whip from Julian Lewis, I think is quite disgraceful. And I hope Conservative MPs, if they've got some guts, will say to Number 10, to Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings, this is not how you run a mature democracy. You do not flout the law and override independent committees, independent by Parliament.
Are you hoping to now see the publication of the Russia report? One of the first things that the committee was apparently going to do after being reconstituted was to publish that report into Russian interference in UK politics?
I've written to Julian Lewis urging him to do that. When I found out that he was now the chair, I was, have to say, delighted, because I think Chris Grayling was put there to create more delays.
Okay, right. So, Dave, we'll have to leave it there. Number 10 have just called me and told me to stop speaking to you because obviously I'm in their pay. So Ed Davey, acting leader of the Liberal Democrats, thank you very much indeed for joining me.